Hello everyone. Welcome back to the Easy English Spark channel. I'm thrilled to have you here today. In today's video, we're diving into something truly exciting: how to boost your English listening and speaking skills, build your confidence, and speak fluently in any situation. Along the way, we'll also be taking a quick look at the journey of a brave prince, Elias, who faces challenges and discovers the power of self-awareness and love in his quest, kind of like the way we approach learning English. Let's light up your English journey and get started. Chapter 1. The Envious Ruler. Once in a distant and powerful kingdom, there lived a queen named Regina. She was renowned throughout the land for her beauty, her intelligence, and her cunning nature. But beneath her graceful exterior, there was a darkness that few knew of. Regina, although admired by many, was incredibly envious, particularly of those around her who were more loved and cherished. The queen's envy wasn't directed just at other women. It was most intensely focused on her own daughter, Princess Elara. You see, Princess Elara was everything that Regina wasn't: kind-hearted, gentle, and adored by everyone she met. People would often whisper about how beautiful and pure-hearted Elara was. They said that the princess shone like a star, with a smile that could light up even the darkest of rooms. This drove the queen mad with jealousy. The queen was not used to being outshone by anyone, let alone her own daughter. While she sat on her throne, with riches and power beyond measure, she saw how her people adored Elara. The princess was loved not just for her beauty, but for her kindness and generosity. She would spend her days helping the poor and caring for those in need, always with a warm smile on her face. The people of the kingdom would gather just to catch a glimpse of her, and they would sing songs of praise in her honor. But the queen, her own mother, felt threatened. It was not just the people's love for her daughter that bothered her. It was the idea that Elara might one day be more powerful, more beloved, and more admired than she herself had ever been. This thought consumed the queen's mind, and her jealousy grew with each passing day. She couldn't bear the idea of anyone loving her daughter more than they loved her. One day, as she sat in her grand chamber, the queen's thoughts turned dark. She knew she had to find a way to keep Elara under her control, to make sure that the princess never took her place as the most beloved in the land. And so, a wicked idea began to form in the queen's mind. If I cannot have the people's love, she thought, then no one shall, not even my daughter. The queen's mind worked quickly, and soon she had devised a plan. She would keep Elara locked away, hidden from the world. She would make sure that no one could see her, that no one could admire her. And to do this, she would need to control who could see the princess. So she came up with an idea, a challenge. A challenge for the many suitors who came to ask for the princess's hand in marriage. "You will never marry her," the queen declared in a cold voice as she looked at her reflection in the mirror. "No man shall win her heart unless he proves himself worthy, and no man will ever be worthy." The queen decided that she would set an impossible task for any prince who dared to ask for Elara's hand. It would be a task so difficult, so unattainable, that no one could ever succeed. Only then would she be able to keep her daughter for herself, away from the prying eyes of the world. Word spread quickly throughout the kingdom and beyond about the queen's challenge. Suitors from far-off lands, princes from powerful kingdoms, and noblemen from distant realms all came to try their luck. They came with hopes of winning the hand of Princess Elara, the most beautiful woman in the land. But when they arrived, they were met with a cold, calculating woman who had no interest in their love or admiration. The queen smiled darkly as she spoke to each prince who came to her with the same request. "You want to marry my daughter, don't you? Then prove yourself worthy. Complete the task I give you, and perhaps then we will talk about your future with Elara." She told each prince that if they could complete the impossible task she set before them, they could marry the princess. But, of course, no one succeeded. The queen's tasks were designed to be insurmountable. She set one after another, each more impossible than the last, watching with satisfaction as each suitor failed. And with every failure, the queen would coldly say, "You will never marry my daughter," and order them to be escorted from the castle, their heads bowed in shame. But the queen did not stop there. She made sure that every failure was a public one. She had her woodcutter stand ready to carry out the execution of each prince who could not complete the tasks. She watched as they were escorted from the castle, and she laughed to herself, thinking, "No one will ever take my daughter from me." As each suitor failed, the queen's jealousy only grew. She told her daughter, "You will never marry Elara. No one will ever be worthy of you. You will remain here under my control forever." And so, Princess Elara remained confined in the castle, her hopes of love and happiness slipping further and further away with each passing day. She longed to find someone who truly loved her, but her mother's cruel and jealous grip kept her trapped in a golden cage. She had no choice but to accept her fate, though her heart ached with the dream of one day being free to love as she wished. But despite the queen's cruelty, one thing remained true. The love of the people for Princess Elara could not be extinguished. And somewhere, beyond the walls of the castle, a prince would soon rise who would challenge the queen's wickedness, ready to prove that love and bravery could overcome even the greatest of evils. Chapter 2: The Impossible Tasks. The sun had barely risen, casting its golden rays across the grand castle as the sounds of the royal bells echoed throughout the kingdom. Word had spread quickly of the queen's challenge, and princes from distant lands had gathered outside the castle gates, eager to prove their worth to win the heart of Princess Elara. Some had traveled for weeks, others for months, but all shared a common hope: to be the one who would break through the queen's iron, grip on her daughter, and win her love. But the queen, seated upon her throne in the grand hall, had no such hopes. Her eyes sparkled with cold determination as she surveyed the princes who stood before her. The room was filled with an air of nervous anticipation, each prince dressed in fine clothes, hoping to impress her with their bravery, their nobility, their strength. Yet, the queen's heart was set. She would not let any of them win Elara's heart, not a single one. "You have come to seek my daughter's hand in marriage," the queen began, her voice as sharp as the cold winter wind. "But do not be fooled. I am not like other mothers who would give their daughter's heart away to the first prince who comes along. My daughter is not for the taking. You must prove yourselves worthy of her, but be warned. The task I set before you will not be easy. No one has ever completed it, and no one ever will." The princes shifted uneasily, glancing at one another. They had heard rumors about the queen's impossible tasks, but they had hoped they were only stories. The queen's gaze swept over them like a hawk searching for prey. She reveled in their discomfort, knowing they were all about to fall into the web she had woven. "Your task," she continued, "is simple in theory, but impossible in execution. You will each be given a task. If you succeed, you may have the privilege of asking for Princess Elara's hand in marriage. But if you fail, your life will be forfeit, and you will never be seen again." The first prince, a tall, broad-shouldered man from a neighboring kingdom, stepped forward confidently. "Your Majesty," he said, "I am ready for any task you set before me. I will not fail." The queen smiled wickedly, enjoying the anticipation. "Very well, Prince Alistair. Your task is to retrieve the golden apple from the forbidden forest, where no one has dared venture in over a century. The forest is filled with fierce beasts and deadly traps. If you can return with the golden apple, you may ask for my daughter's hand." Prince Alistair, though intimidated, remained brave. He knew that if he completed the task, he would not only win Elara's heart, but also gain the Queen's approval. Without hesitation, he turned and rode off toward the forest, determined to succeed, but the Queen's eyes followed him as he disappeared into the distance, her smile never fading. She knew that Prince Alistair would never return. The Forbidden Forest was known for its dangers, and no one had ever come out alive. She was certain that, like the others, he would perish, and she would remain in control of her daughter. A few hours passed, and the next prince stepped forward, his eyes filled with determination. He was Prince Edmund, a young man from a faraway land. He had heard the stories of the Queen's cruelty, but still believed in his own abilities. "Your Majesty," he said, "I am not afraid of the Forbidden Forest. I will bring you the golden apple." The Queen looked at him, her lips curling into a sinister smile. "Ah, Prince Edmund, you too believe you are invincible. But do not underestimate the dangers of the forest. Your task will not be easy. However, if you succeed, I will grant you a reward beyond your wildest dreams." With those words, Prince Edmund set off toward the forest, following the same path as Prince Alistair. Hours passed, and the sun began to dip low in the sky. Still, neither prince had returned. The Queen's gaze flickered toward the grand clock in the castle hall, its hands moving steadily toward the time when she would issue the next task. Her thoughts were cold and calculating. She could feel the fear building in the air, the prince's uncertainty growing. And with it, her joy grew. They were all about to fail. The last prince, Prince Frederick, stepped forward, his eyes filled with a mixture of hope and fear. He had heard the stories of the previous princes who had failed, but he was determined to try. He bowed before the Queen and said, "Your Majesty, I may not be the strongest or the bravest, but I will not give up. I will succeed where others have failed." The Queen studied him carefully, her sharp eyes reading every inch of his face. She could see his determination, but she knew it would be in vain. "Your task is this," the Queen said, her voice dripping with malice. "You must climb the tallest mountain in the kingdom, the one that no man has ever dared to scale. At the summit, you will find a crystal flower that blooms once every 1,000 years. Bring me the flower, and you may ask for my daughter's hand." Prince Frederick nodded, accepting the task. Without hesitation, he set off toward the mountain, knowing that this would be his chance to prove himself worthy. The queen watched him go, her mind already turning to the next steps of her cruel game. As the sun set and night fell over the kingdom, the queen sat in her chambers, content with the events of the day. One by one, the princes had failed her task, and one by one, they would vanish from the kingdom. She knew that it was only a matter of time before they were all gone. And yet, despite her cold victory, the queen could not stop the nagging thought at the back of her mind. What if one of them succeeds? What if one of them is truly worthy of Elara's love? She quickly dismissed the thought. No one could succeed. The tasks were impossible by design. As night deepened, the queen smiled to herself. No one will ever take her from me. My daughter will remain with me forever. Chapter 3. Prince Elias's Decision. In a small kingdom nestled between rolling hills and lush forests, there lived a young prince named Elias. His kingdom, though humble, was filled with warmth, and its people adored their ruler, King Alden, Elias's father. The kingdom was modest, but it was a place of peace, where the clamor of war and conflict was a distant echo. The citizens worked the land, grew their crops, and shared their harvests. Life in the kingdom was simple, but it was a life filled with happiness and harmony. Prince Elias was the only son of King Alden, and from a young age he had been taught the ways of nobility and justice. He was kind-hearted, compassionate, and fair, always willing to help those in need. Unlike many princes who were spoiled by luxury and power, Elias was grounded, understanding the value of hard work and the importance of humility. His heart was as gentle as his spirit, and he treated everyone, rich or poor, with the same respect. But despite the warmth of his home and the adoration of his people, Elias's heart was troubled. For he had fallen in love with someone far beyond the borders of his kingdom. Princess Elara, the daughter of the powerful Queen Regina, was a woman unlike any other. Her beauty was legendary, and her kindness was known throughout the land. Though Elias had never met her in person, he had heard tales of her grace and compassion from traveling merchants and passing adventurers. It was said that her smile could brighten even the darkest of days, that her laughter was like music that filled the air with joy. But it was not just her beauty that captivated Elias, it was her heart. The story spoke of a princess who cared deeply for her people, who spent her days helping the poor and bringing joy to those in need. Elias could not help but feel drawn to her, despite the distance and the impossibility of ever meeting her. One day, while sitting in the royal gardens, Elias overheard two courtiers talking about Princess Elara. They spoke of her kindness and her mother's cruelty, how the queen had set impossible tasks for every suitor who wished to marry her daughter. Elias's heart ached as he listened. He learned that no prince had ever succeeded in completing the queen's tasks, and the ones who had tried were sent away, defeated and broken. Some had even perished. "I will never be like the others," Elias whispered to himself, his voice barely audible over the gentle breeze rustling through the trees. "I will not let fear stop me. I will go to her. I will prove myself worthy of her love." He stood up from the stone bench where he had been sitting and walked toward the royal castle. His mind was made up. He would go to Queen Regina's kingdom and ask for Princess Elara's hand in marriage. He knew it would be a difficult journey, fraught with dangers and challenges, but his heart could not be swayed. He could not let the queen's cruelty stop him from seeking the one thing he longed for, Elara's love. When he arrived in the throne room, King Alden was sitting by the fireplace, reading a scroll. Elias approached his father with a somber look on his face. His father looked up, sensing the weight of his son's thoughts. "What troubles you, my son?" King Alden asked, his voice full of concern. Elias took a deep breath, the decision weighing heavily on his chest. He had always trusted his father's wisdom, and he needed his guidance now more than ever. "Father," Elias began, "I have made up my mind. I will go to the kingdom of Queen Regina and ask for Princess Elara's hand in marriage. I know that the queen has set impossible tasks for all suitors, but I cannot live a life without knowing if I could have had her love. I must try, even if it means facing death." King Alden's expression faltered for a moment, concern flashing across his face. He knew the stories of Queen Regina's cruelty, and he feared for his son's safety. "Elias," he said softly, "I cannot lose you. You are my only son, and this kingdom needs you. The queen's trials are impossible. No one has ever succeeded, and I fear you will be no different. My heart cannot bear to lose you to her wickedness." Elias knelt before his father, his voice steady but filled with resolve. "Father, I understand your fears, but my heart tells me that I must do this. I cannot live knowing I never even tried. I love her, and I believe that if I can show her that I am worthy, I can win her heart. You taught me to never give up on what I believe in, no matter the odds." King Alden's eyes softened, and he placed a hand on his son's shoulder. You are a brave young man, Elias, and your heart is pure. I cannot stand in the way of your destiny. But know this, if you choose this path, you must be prepared for anything. The queen will stop at nothing to ensure that no one marries her daughter. Be ready for whatever may come. Elias nodded solemnly, his father's words sinking deep into his heart. I will be ready. I have thought long and hard about this, and I know the risks. But I cannot live a life of regret, Father. I must follow my heart. With his father's blessing, Elias began to prepare for the journey. The next morning, he gathered a small group of trusted knights and servants to accompany him. He knew he could not face the queen's challenges alone. They were formidable, and he would need all the help he could get. As Elias stood at the gates of the castle, ready to embark on his journey, his heart was heavy with both excitement and fear. The road ahead would be treacherous, and the tasks set by Queen Regina were designed to break even the strongest of men. But Elias had something the others did not. He had the belief that love could overcome even the greatest of obstacles. With a final glance at his home, Elias mounted his horse, his eyes set on the distant kingdom of Queen Regina. He rode off with determination, the wind whipping through his hair, his heart beating faster with every step he took toward the unknown. He knew the journey would not be easy, but he was willing to face whatever dangers lay ahead. For in his heart there was only one goal: to win Princess Elara's love no matter the cost. Chapter 4. The Journey Begins. The morning dawned crisp and clear, with a pale blue sky stretching endlessly above the kingdom of Prince Elias. The golden rays of the sun filtered through the trees, casting long shadows across the cobblestone roads that led to the royal gates. It was a beautiful day, yet Elias's heart was heavy. Today was the day he would leave his home, his father, and everything he had ever known, all in the pursuit of a dream that seemed impossible. But he was determined. Elias had spent the past several days preparing for his journey, gathering supplies, and consulting with his most trusted advisors. He knew the road ahead would be filled with peril, and though he had trained as a knight, he was still just a young man venturing into the unknown. His heart longed for Princess Elara, and he would not let fear hold him back. No matter how daunting the queen's tasks might be, Elias was ready to face them all. The night before he was set to leave, King Alden had called his son to his chambers. His father's face was drawn with concern, his eyes reflecting the worry that had been building in him since Elias had made his decision. "You do not have to do this, Elias," King Alden had said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "There is no shame in staying here and ruling our kingdom. You are the future of this land, my son. I cannot bear to lose you to the madness of the vow." Queen's trials. Elias had knelt before his father, taking his hands in his own. "Father, I know you worry. I understand your fears. But I must do this. I cannot live with the thought of what might have been. I have to try. I cannot let my heart be ruled by doubt." King Alden had sighed deeply, his grip tightening around his son's hands. "Then you have my blessing, Elias. But be careful. The queen is cruel, and her heart is as cold as the mountains themselves. Do not let her destroy you as she has destroyed so many others." Elias had nodded, his resolve firm. "I will not let her win. I promise, Father, I will return to you. I will not fail." The next morning, Elias stood at the castle gates. His horse, a majestic black steed named Shadow, waiting patiently by his side. He had packed his things carefully: food, water, a few weapons for protection, and a small carved locket with a picture of his mother, who had passed when he was young. It was a memento he had carried with him his entire life, a reminder of the love and strength she had given him. A small group of his most trusted knights and servants had gathered to accompany him. They were brave, loyal, and knew the dangers that lay ahead. Though Elias had insisted that he could manage alone, his men would not hear of it. They had pledged their loyalty to him, and they would see him through the journey, no matter what the queen's trials demanded. "Are you sure you want to do this, Your Highness?" Sir Rowan, one of his oldest knights, asked quietly. "The road will be long, and the dangers, they are unlike anything we've ever faced." Elias looked at Sir Rowan and smiled, though there was a trace of sadness in his eyes. "I must, Sir Rowan. I must do this for Elara and for myself. If I do not try, I will regret it for the rest of my life." The group mounted their horses, and with one final look at the kingdom that had been his home for so long, Elias set off, down the winding road that led out of the castle gates. His heart raced, both with excitement and with the weight of the unknown. The wind tugged at his cloak, and the sound of hooves echoed in the quiet morning air as they rode toward the distant kingdom of Queen Regina. The journey was not an easy one. The path that led from Elias's kingdom to Queen Regina's was long, stretching across valleys, through forests, and over rugged hills. It was a road few traveled, and fewer still returned from. Every day brought new challenges. The weather was unpredictable. ranging from torrential rains that soaked them to their very bones, to searing heat that made the ground beneath their feet feel like an oven. But Elias did not falter. He pressed on, driven by his determination to reach the queen's castle and face whatever trials lay ahead. As the days passed, Elias found himself thinking more and more about Princess Elara. He wondered what she was, like, what her voice sounded like, what her laugh might sound like. He thought of her kindness and grace, the way people spoke of her with such admiration. His heart swelled with longing, and he could feel the fire of hope burning brighter inside him. But with that hope also came fear. He feared the queen's cruelty, feared that no matter how hard he tried, he would fail, just like all the others. He had heard the stories, the ones of brave princes who had entered the queen's kingdom, only to be defeated by the impossible tasks she set for them. Many had perished, their lives extinguished by the queen's cold heart. Would he be the next to fall? At night, as they camped beneath the stars, Elias would sit by the fire, staring into the flames. The crackling of the fire and the rustling of the trees in the breeze were the only sounds in the stillness of the night. Sir Rowan often sat beside him, silently offering his presence and support. "You are strong, Your Highness," Sir Rowan said, one night breaking the silence. "But remember this, whether you succeed or fail, you will always have your honor. That is something no one can take from you." Elias looked at his knight, his heart full of gratitude. "Thank you, Rowan. Your words give me strength." The journey was not without its dangers. As they traveled deeper into the wilderness, they encountered wild animals, bandits, and the treacherous terrain of the mountains. But Elias and his companions faced every challenge with courage. Shadow, his trusty steed, carried him through the hardest parts of the journey, never faltering, just as Elias himself never did. His knights fought bravely at his side, protecting him from every danger that threatened them. One evening, as they camped near a river, Elias and Sir Rowan sat beside the water, listening to the soft rush of the current. Elias's thoughts drifted once more to Princess Elara. He wondered how she was holding up, if she was as hopeful as he was, or if the queen's trials had drained her spirit. "I will get to her," Elias said quietly, more to himself than to anyone else. "I will face whatever the queen throws at me. I will not let her keep us apart." Sir Rowan nodded, his expression thoughtful. "And you will, Your Highness. I believe in you." The following day the path became steeper, the mountains looming larger in the distance. They were getting closer now, Every step they took brought them nearer to the Queen's kingdom, and with it, the challenges that awaited. Elias could feel the weight of his destiny pressing down on him, but he refused to turn back. He had come too far to let fear take hold. As the group neared the border of Queen Regina's kingdom, Elias could feel a shift in the air. The roads grew quieter, and the trees seemed to close in around them. The land itself seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for the prince to arrive. "Prepare yourselves," Elias said to his men, his voice steady and calm. "We are about to enter the Queen's lands. We must be ready for anything." With his words, the group continued their journey, their faces set with determination. The journey had just begun, but Elias knew in his heart that this was only the first step of a much longer and more difficult path. The Queen's trials awaited, but so did Princess Elara, and he would not fail her. Chapter 5. Meeting the Hungry Giant. The journey had been long and exhausting, but Elias and his companions pressed on, undeterred by the hardships they encountered along the way. As they ventured deeper into the wilderness, the terrain grew more treacherous, the forest thicker, and the roads less defined. The once clear path became an overgrown, winding trail, barely visible beneath the thick blanket of moss and fallen leaves. Despite the danger that lurked in the shadows of the trees, Elias's determination never wavered. He had come this far, and he could not afford to turn back now. Princess Elara awaited, and with her, the hope of breaking the Queen's cruel grip on her heart. The trials were ahead, but Elias felt ready. His heart burned with the certainty that he would succeed, no matter what the Queen had in store for him. One morning, as the group continued their trek through the dense woods, the air thick with mist, Elias noticed something strange. The sound of the forest seemed different. The usual chorus of birdsong had quieted, replaced by an eerie silence. Even the wind, which had been rustling the leaves just moments ago, had stilled. "Do you feel that?" Sir Rowan asked, his voice low and cautious. Elias nodded, his instincts telling him that something was amiss. "Stay alert," he whispered, urging his companions to be extra watchful. "Something doesn't feel right." The group continued, moving cautiously through the trees, their eyes scanning the surroundings. Elias's hand rested lightly on the hilt of his sword, ready to draw it at a moment's notice. His horse, Shadow, moved silently beneath him, ears flicking in every direction, as if aware of the strange atmosphere as well. Then, just as Elias began to think it was nothing more than his own imagination, they saw it. A massive figure lying ahead in the clearing, blocking the road. At first, Elias thought it was a fallen tree, but as they drew closer, the figure stirred, and a deep voice rumbled from its resting place. "Who dares disturb my sleep?" The voice boomed, sending a shiver down Elias's spine. It was so deep and loud that it seemed to shake the very ground beneath them. Elias and his companions came to a halt, startled by the sheer size of the creature before them. Towering above them, the creature was a giant of immense proportions, easily 3 times the height of any man, with skin as rough and weathered as stone. His body was massive, with muscles rippling beneath thick, leathery skin. His face was broad, with a wild, unkempt beard that reached down to his chest, and his eyes were barely visible beneath the heavy brow that hung over them like a storm cloud. The giant yawned, a sound so thunderous it seemed to shake the trees around them. As he slowly sat up, Elias and his men watched in stunned silence, their eyes wide with disbelief. Who are you?" Elias managed to ask, his voice a mixture of awe and caution. The giant blinked slowly, his gaze shifting to the group of travelers before him. "Ah, a prince and his men," he said, his voice more curious than threatening. "I am Grim, the giant of these woods, and you are trespassing in my domain." Grim's voice was deep and gravelly, and his tone was not one of anger, but of indifference. It was as though the giant had grown so used to being alone in the woods that the presence of others barely registered. Elias exchanged a quick glance with Sir Rowan. The situation was precarious, but Elias refused to be intimidated. "We mean no harm," Elias said, his voice firm but respectful. "We are travelers, seeking our way through these woods. We do not wish to disturb you." Grim let out a low chuckle, which rumbled like distant thunder. "Disturb me? Ha! You have no idea how often I am disturbed by travelers like you. But since you are not attacking me, I suppose I will spare you the trouble." He stretched his enormous arms and yawned once again, as if bored by the whole affair. "What brings a prince like you so far into the wilderness?" Elias hesitated for a moment, uncertain how much he should reveal about his mission. But then he remembered that Grim might be the key to overcoming one of the many obstacles that lay ahead. The Queen's trials were designed to break even the bravest of men. Perhaps the giant could offer him some help, or at the very least, some advice. "I seek to prove myself worthy of Princess Elara's hand in marriage," Elias said, his voice steady. "I must face the Queen's impossible tasks, and I have come through these woods to reach her kingdom." Grimm's eyes narrowed slightly as he listened to Elias's words. "The queen's tasks, eh? A fool's errand, if you ask me," he muttered, his voice laced with a hint of disdain. "I've seen many princes come and go, all eager to win the heart of the princess. None have succeeded, and most have failed miserably. The queen is a cruel one, and her trials are impossible by design." Elias's heart sank slightly, but he refused to be discouraged. "I know," he said quietly, "but I must try. I cannot live with the thought of failing without giving everything I have. And I believe, despite everything, that I can succeed." The giant looked down at Elias, his gaze shifting to something more curious, more knowing. Grim rumbled. "You are a brave one, I'll give you that. But bravery alone won't save you from the queen's tricks. You'll need more than courage if you hope to survive her tests." Elias stood tall in the face of the giant's scrutiny. "What should I do then?" he asked, his voice full of determination. "Do you know of a way to succeed?" Grim scratched his beard thoughtfully, as though considering Elias's question. After a long pause, he leaned forward, his massive face now only inches away from Elias. The sheer size of the giant was enough to make the ground beneath Elias feel unstable. "You will need help, Prince," Grim said, his voice suddenly lower, more serious. "And I can offer you that help. On one condition." Elias raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What is the condition?" Grim's eyes gleamed, a mischievous twinkle in them. "I am hungry," the giant said, his voice filled with a rumbling laugh. "I have not had a good meal in days. If you can find me food, real food, enough to satisfy a giant like me, then I will help you in your journey. I will offer you my strength, my knowledge of the woods, and my protection. But until then, you will not pass." Elias's eyes widened slightly. A giant asking for food? It was an unusual request, but Elias knew that sometimes the most unexpected allies were the ones who made all the difference. "What do you eat?" he asked, his voice calm despite the strange request. Grim grinned, his teeth as large as daggers. "Food?" he said. "What do I eat, you ask? 10 chickens, 20 loaves of bread, a barrel of stew, and don't forget the cakes. You wouldn't believe how many cakes a giant can eat. But that's the minimum, of course." Elias felt a flicker of uncertainty. This was no small task, but he had come too far to turn back now. "We will get you your food, Grim," he said, his voice steady with resolve. "We will find what you need, and then you will help us." Grim's massive grin widened. "Good. You are A wise prince after all. Go, find the food, and I shall give you the help you seek. And with that, Elias and his companions set off once again, now with a new goal, to find the food that would satisfy the giant's insatiable hunger. Little did they know, this unlikely encounter with Grimm would be only the beginning of a strange and unpredictable journey. A journey that would test their resolve in ways they could never have imagined. Chapter 6. The Ears That Heard Everything. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden glow over the dense forest as Elias and his companions trudged onward. The journey had been long, and the weight of their mission pressed heavily on their shoulders. They had managed to satisfy the giant Grimm's hunger, barely, by scavenging what little food they could find in the forest. But now, the group continued on the path that led them deeper into Queen Regina's territory, uncertain of what dangers or obstacles lay ahead. Elias could feel the air growing thicker with tension, and the forest seemed to close in around them. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig beneath their feet made him tense, ever watchful. His thoughts kept returning to the Queen's impossible tasks. He had already faced Grimm, and now, with the giant's help, they had a little more confidence that they could overcome whatever else awaited them. But the uncertainty of the Queen's trials still loomed large in his mind. Would the next trial be as daunting? Or would it be something altogether more insidious? Stay alert, Elias called to his men, his voice firm. We're entering a part of the forest I've never seen before. The road here feels strange. Sir Rowan, always by Elias's side, nodded in agreement. Yes, my prince. Something feels off. The forest grows denser with each step, and there's a silence to it, almost unnatural. The group paused for a moment, listening. There was no sound of birds singing, no rustle of small animals in the underbrush. It was as though the entire forest had held its breath. The eerie silence seemed to press in on them from every direction. Perhaps we should turn back, Sir Rowan suggested, though his voice held a hint of uncertainty. This place doesn't feel right. Elias's heart raced, but he shook his head. We cannot turn back now. We're close. I can feel it. The Queen's trials are ahead, and we cannot be deterred by mere shadows. We have a mission to complete. The group pressed forward, their footsteps muffled by the thick carpet of moss that covered the ground. The path narrowed as the trees grew closer together, their twisted branches forming a canopy overhead that blocked out much of the sky. The air was cool and damp, and the smell of wet earth and decaying leaves filled their nostrils. As they ventured, Further into the forest, Elias suddenly noticed something peculiar. The trees around them began to thin out slightly, and ahead of them, standing on the side of the path, was a man. He was tall and thin, with wild, untamed hair that framed his gaunt face. He wore ragged clothes, but what caught Elias's attention most were his ears. They were enormous, far larger than any humans, and they seemed to twitch and move at the slightest sound. The man's head turned as Elias and his party drew closer, and his massive ears seemed to track their every movement. He didn't seem threatening, but there was something odd and unsettling about him. His eyes, though they were sharp and observant, held an air of deep, unsettling calm. "Who goes there?" the man called out, his voice surprisingly gentle, considering his size and the strange look about him. His voice was soft, yet carried a certain clarity, as if he could hear every tiny sound in the world. "We mean no harm," Elias called back, wary but respectful. "We are travelers seeking passage through these woods. We're on a journey to reach the Queen's kingdom." The man tilted his head to the side, his large ears twitching as though he were listening intently to something far, beyond what Elias could hear. "A journey, you say? To the Queen's kingdom?" His voice was filled with curiosity, but there was something more, a knowing, as though he already knew more about their quest than they had revealed. "I have heard the whispers of many who seek the Queen, and I have heard the cries of those who have failed her tasks." Elias and his companions exchanged nervous glances. "You have heard of the Queen's trials?" Elias asked cautiously. The man nodded slowly, his enormous ears twitching as though they were constantly listening to a world that only he could hear. "Yes, I hear everything," he said, his tone soft but filled with an eerie certainty. "The forest speaks to me. The wind carries the voices of those who have passed this way before, and I hear the whispers of those who have succeeded and those who have failed." Elias felt a shiver run down his spine. "Who are you?" he asked, his curiosity piqued. "How do you know so much?" The man smiled, a strange, almost sad smile. "I am called Hearer. I have the gift, some would say curse, of hearing everything. No sound escapes me. I can hear the thoughts of the trees, the movements of the creatures, and the heartbeat of every living thing around me. I have been blessed with the ability to listen, but I have also been cursed with the knowledge of all that I hear." Elias stepped forward, intrigued. "Then you can help us, can you not?" he asked. "You know of the Queen's trials, of the tasks that await those who seek her kingdom. Can you tell us what to expect? Hearer's eyes softened as he looked at Elias. Ah, you are brave, young prince. Brave and determined. But the Queen's trials are not something you can prepare for. They are not challenges of strength or skill alone. They are challenges of the heart, of the mind. You must be willing to face your deepest fears, your greatest doubts, and your hidden desires. The Queen does not test you with physical trials, but with those things that lie within you. Elias frowned, unsure of what the man meant. You speak in riddles. Can you not give us more concrete advice? Hearer's large ears twitched again as he listened intently. I will tell you this, Prince. The Queen's first task is one of great danger. It will test your courage, yes, but it will also test your compassion. If you fail to understand the nature of the trial, you will never succeed. It is not about defeating an enemy or completing a simple task. It is about understanding the heart of what is being asked of you. Elias's mind raced. He had heard rumors about the Queen's tasks, but nothing like this. He had expected physical tests, challenges of strength or endurance, but this was different. This was a test of the soul. Then what should we do? Elias asked, his voice filled with urgency. What is the key to succeeding? Hearer's eyes grew distant, and for a moment, he seemed to lose himself in the sounds around him. You must listen, he said quietly. Listen not just to the task at hand, but to the world around you. The answers you seek are often hidden in the silence, in the spaces between words. Do not rush. Listen with your heart, for only then will you understand. Elias stood there for a moment, digesting Hearer's words. He wasn't sure what to make of them, but there was something in the man's voice that told him the warning was genuine. The Queen's trials would not be simple. They would require more than just strength. They would demand wisdom, patience, and perhaps even sacrifice. I understand, Elias said at last, though he wasn't entirely sure he did. Thank you for your help. We will heed your advice. Hearer nodded slowly, his ears twitching as he listened to the sounds around him once more. Go now, Prince. But remember, heed the silence as much as the noise. And remember, the Queen's trials are not always what they seem. With that, Elias and his companions turned to leave. As they made their way down the path, the strange man's words echoed in Elias's mind. The Queen's trials are not always what they seem. As the sun began to set, the forest grew darker, the shadows lengthening. Elias knew the path ahead would be fraught with danger. But now, more than ever, he understood that the true test of his journey would not be in the trials themselves, but in the way he listened to the world around him. The Queen's challenges had just begun, but Elias was determined to face them, with the knowledge that the real answers might lie in the quiet moments of the journey, the spaces between the tasks themselves. Chapter 7. The Longest Arms. The path through the forest had become increasingly difficult, with dense thickets and twisting vines making their way through the underbrush. The trees, tall and ancient, loomed overhead like silent sentinels, their gnarled branches blocking much of the sunlight. Elias and his companions had been walking for hours, the air heavy with the scent of earth and moss, when they first caught sight of something unusual. Ahead, the road seemed to widen into a clearing. The trees on either side of the path bent inward, their trunks growing closer together as if something were pushing them from within. And there, in the center of the clearing, stood a strange sight, a pair of arms, long and impossibly vast, reaching out from the dense forest. At first, Elias thought it was some kind of tree or vine, but as they drew closer, he could make out the unmistakable shape of arms, massive, with skin like the bark of a tree, stretching high above the treetops and disappearing into the canopy above. The arms were so long that they seemed to stretch forever, their fingers twitching with a life of their own. It was a sight unlike any Elias had ever seen, and it gave him pause. "Do you see that?" Elias asked quietly, turning to Sir Rowan and the others. "What in the world is that?" Sir Rowan's eyes narrowed as he stared at the towering arms. "It's unnatural," he said. "I have never seen anything like it." As they moved closer, the arms began to shift, and a voice, deep and resonant, echoed through the clearing. "Who dares to approach the longest arms in all the land?" The voice boomed, shaking the leaves of the trees and sending ripples through the grass at their feet. Elias, though surprised, did not falter. He had faced strange and dangerous creatures already on this journey, and he knew that the Queen's trials would test him in ways he had never imagined. He stepped forward, his heart steady. "I am Prince Elias," he called into the clearing. "We seek to pass through this forest on our way to Queen Regina's kingdom. We mean no harm, but we must continue our journey." The voice rumbled again, but this time it held a note of amusement. "You seek to pass through? What makes you think you are worthy of passing by the longest arms in the land? Elias took a deep breath. The creature, whatever it was, seemed to be challenging him. I seek to prove myself worthy of Princess Elara's hand in marriage, Elias said boldly. The queen has set impossible tasks, and I must complete them to win her heart. If I fail, I may never see her again. There was a long pause, during which the giant arms shifted again, as if the creature were considering Elias's words. Then the voice spoke once more, its tone now more thoughtful. A noble cause, Prince, it said. But to pass through you must prove yourself worthy of the strength it takes to endure the trials ahead. The Queen's trials are not only for the strong of arm, but for the strong of heart and mind. To earn my help, you must show me that you have both. Elias stood tall, his resolve unwavering. I will do whatever it takes, he said, his voice steady, with conviction. I am ready to face any challenge, no matter how difficult. The giant arms moved again, stretching out in a slow, deliberate motion. Very well, Prince Elias, the voice boomed, and with a flick of the immense hands, the clearing around them seemed to shift. Trees that had once blocked their way were now pushed aside, creating a path through the dense forest. I will help you, but first, you must pass a test. Elias furrowed his brow, unsure of what the test would entail. What must I do? He asked, his voice full of determination. The voice paused for a moment, and then the giant arms moved once more, this time gently lowering a large stone pedestal into the center of the clearing. On top of the pedestal sat a large, intricately carved box, its surface adorned with symbols and runes that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. You must open this box, the voice said, but there is no key to unlock it. No magic, no strength of arm will open it. Only the strength of your heart and mind can solve the puzzle it holds. If you succeed, I will grant you my aid. If you fail, you will be lost in these woods forever, unable to move forward or back. Elias studied the box carefully. It was a beautiful thing, but it exuded an air of mystery, its carvings intricate and ancient. He could feel that it held some deeper meaning, a puzzle that could not be solved by force alone. The eyes of the giant, hidden somewhere above him, watched silently as Elias approached the pedestal. The challenge was clear. Brute strength and violence would not help him here. The Queen's trials were as much about wisdom and patience as they were about power. This was a test not just of skill, but of understanding. He reached out and gently placed his hands on the box. The moment he touched it, the symbols began to shift. the runes swirling like liquid light beneath his fingers. The sensation was strange, like the box itself was alive and aware of his touch. Elias pulled back slightly, observing how the markings moved in response to his hand. The box seemed to want him to interact with it, not with haste or brute force, but with understanding. "Think, Prince," the voice from above rumbled again. "The puzzle cannot be solved by haste. It is not a question of power, but of clarity. Seek within yourself, and the answer will be clear." Elias closed his eyes and took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing thoughts. He thought back to everything he had learned on his journey. The advice of the giant Grimm had been clear. Patience and understanding were just as important as courage. He had to listen to the world around him, just as Hearer had advised. And now, the box seemed to demand the same from him: patience, calm, and a clear mind. Slowly, Elias opened his eyes and focused on the box once more. The symbols on its surface began to form patterns, and as he studied them, he realized that they weren't just random marks. They were a reflection of his own journey. The winding paths of the road ahead, the twists and turns of his heart, the trials he had already faced, and the ones yet to come. All of it was connected. A sudden realization washed over him. The box wasn't just a puzzle to be solved. It was a reflection of himself. The answer lay not in finding a hidden key or in breaking the box open, but in understanding his own purpose. What was his true reason for coming this far? What was the strength of his heart, and how could he show it? With newfound clarity, Elias gently pressed his hand into the center of the box. The runes shifted and clicked into place, the box opening with a soft, satisfying sound. Inside, there was nothing but a simple piece of parchment, unadorned and plain, but with a single line of text written in a delicate hand. "The strongest are those who listen, not to the world around them, but to the truth within themselves." Elias smiled to himself, understanding that this was the answer. He had not been asked to solve a physical puzzle, but a mental one. The challenge had been to trust his own instincts, to understand that the greatest strength lay not in force, but in the strength of his heart and mind. With the box open, the giant's voice boomed once more, this time filled with approval. "Well done, Prince Elias. You have passed the test. You have shown the strength of both your heart and your mind, and for that, I will help you." The giant's massive arms reached down, and one of the hands, vast and strong, gently scooped Elias up, lifting him high into the air. From this height, Elias could see the entire forest stretching out before him, a landscape of beauty and danger, but now with a sense of clarity he had never had before. "You have earned my aid," the giant said, his voice now kind and reassuring. "Go forward, Prince. The path ahead is clear. You have proven yourself worthy." With that, Elias was gently lowered back to the ground, and the giant's arms retracted into the trees, disappearing into the thick canopy above. The way forward was now open, and Elias knew that with each trial he passed, he was closer to the princess, and closer to proving his worth. But as he looked ahead, a sense of both excitement and trepidation filled him. The queen's trials were far from over, and who knew what awaited him next? But now, with the knowledge that strength of mind and heart had brought him this far, he felt more ready than ever to face whatever lay ahead. Chapter 8. The Man with the Eye of Clarity. The air had begun to cool as Elias and his companions ventured deeper into the heart of the queen's domain. The trees, now fewer and more scattered, allowed the pale light of the afternoon sun to filter through in patches, casting long, dappled shadows on the forest floor. The road ahead twisted through a series of narrow, rocky paths, and the group had grown weary from the relentless journey. Each step felt heavier than the last, but Elias's determination remained unshaken. As they trekked through the rugged terrain, Elias couldn't help but think of all that had happened so far. He had already overcome Grim, the giant with insatiable hunger, and solved the riddle posed by the longest arms. These challenges had not been easy, but they had taught him vital lessons about patience, strength, and wisdom. He now knew that the queen's trials were not just physical. They were tests of heart, mind, and spirit. Still, doubts lingered in his mind. What more could lie ahead? What new challenge would test him next? His heart raced at the thought of what the queen might have in store for him. It wasn't long before Elias's thoughts were interrupted by a faint sound, a low hum, like the soft breeze rustling through the leaves. The sound seemed to come from somewhere ahead, and it was unlike anything they had heard before. "Do you hear that?" Sir Rowan asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty as he turned his head, trying to locate the source of the noise. Elias nodded, his senses alert. "Stay, on guard," he said, signaling to his companions to be ready. The forest had been quiet for so long, and this new noise, faint but persistent, felt out of place. As they pressed forward, the hum grew louder. It wasn't a song, nor was it the sound of a creature or the wind. It was a steady, almost rhythmic vibration, and it seemed to draw them closer. And then, as if responding to their presence, The source of the sound finally revealed itself. They entered a small clearing, and there, standing in the center, was a man unlike any Elias had seen before. He was tall, though not as massive as the giant Grimm, and his movements were graceful, almost fluid. He wore a cloak of deep indigo, adorned with intricate symbols, and his eyes, his most striking feature, were unlike any Elias had ever encountered. The man's eyes were not the usual kind. One of them was perfectly normal, but the other was different. It was an eye so clear, so bright, that it seemed to shimmer with an inner light. The eye was larger than a typical human eye, and as Elias looked into it, he felt as though it were looking straight through him, into the very depths of his soul. "Who is this?" Sir Rowan whispered, his hand instinctively resting on the hilt of his sword. The man in the center of the clearing smiled softly, and Elias could sense an aura of calmness around him. "I am the man with the eye of clarity," the man said, his voice resonating with an otherworldly calm. "You are here because you seek the Queen's kingdom, and you seek to pass her trials. You have come far, Prince Elias, but you will not go further without understanding the true nature of your journey." Elias stepped forward, his heart beating faster with curiosity and a touch of wariness. "What do you mean? Who are you, and why? Do you speak of my journey as though you know it?" The man's lips curled into a knowing smile. "I know much, for I see things that others cannot. I see the truths hidden within the hearts of men. I see the paths that lie before them and the choices they will make. I see not just with my eyes, but with the eye of clarity, the one that allows me to see beyond the surface." Elias's brow furrowed in confusion. "But how can that help me? I have already faced Grimm and the longest arms. The Queen's trials are all I care about now. I must prove myself worthy of Princess Elara's love." The man with the eye of clarity looked at Elias with gentle eyes, and for the first time, Elias felt a sense of vulnerability. The man's gaze was not one of judgment, but one of understanding, as though he had seen the very fears and desires that lay in Elias's heart. "The Queen's trials," the man said softly, "are not just tests of courage or strength. They are tests of understanding. They will ask you to confront not only the world around you, but the truth within yourself. The trials are a mirror. They will show you your true nature, your fears, your desires, your weaknesses, and only by facing those can you hope to succeed." Elias took a deep breath. He had thought he understood the trials thus far, But the words of the man with the eye of clarity made him question whether he truly knew what awaited him. "I do not fear facing the trials," Elias said, trying to steady his voice. "But I do not understand what you mean by looking inward. I have faced physical challenges. I have fought, and I have solved riddles. But now you speak of something deeper, something I am not sure I am ready for." The man nodded, as if he had anticipated Elias's response. "That is the first step, Prince Elias. Recognizing that you do not have all the answers, that you are still learning, is a sign of strength, not weakness. The Queen's trials will force you to see yourself as you truly are. They will strip away the illusions you hold about who you are and what you are capable of. The path will be hard, but it is through this self-understanding that you will gain the clarity needed to overcome the Queen's challenges." Elias stood still, processing the man's words. His mind was racing. Could he truly succeed by confronting the truth within himself? His desire to prove himself, to show that he was worthy of Princess Elara's love, had been his driving force. But now this man was telling him that the journey was not just about proving himself to others. It was about proving himself to himself. "How do I prepare for what lies ahead?" Elias asked quietly, almost as if speaking to himself. The man with the eye of clarity took a slow step forward, his voice soft but filled with an undeniable wisdom. "You have already taken the first step, Prince Elias. By coming this far, you have shown your determination. But now you must look deeper. The trials are not about winning or losing, but about learning, about recognizing what is within you and accepting both your strength and your weakness. Only then can you face the Queen's tests with clarity." Elias felt a weight settle upon him, the gravity of the journey ahead more tangible than ever. He had expected to face more physical trials, more tasks that tested his bravery and skill. But the man with the eye of clarity had revealed to him a deeper truth. The trials were not just about overcoming external challenges. They were about confronting the deepest parts of himself. The man's voice broke through Elias's thoughts. "There is one more thing you must know, Prince Elias. The Queen's trials are not meant to destroy you. They are meant to awaken you, to help you discover the power that lies within. Do not fear what you will find when you look within. It is only by understanding who you truly are that you will find the strength to succeed." Elias nodded, feeling a sense of resolve settle in his chest. The path ahead would not be easy, and the trials would be unlike anything he had ever imagined. But now he understood that the real battle was not with the Queen or her impossible tasks. It was with himself, To pass the trials, he would need to face the truth within his own heart. "Thank you," Elias said, his voice filled with gratitude. "Your words have given me the clarity I needed." The man with the eye of clarity smiled warmly, his large shimmering eye glinting in the fading light. "Go forward, Prince Elias," he said. "You are ready. The Queen's trials await. But now you are no longer the same person who first entered this forest. You have begun to understand the greatest truth of all, the truth of who you truly are." With that, the man slowly faded into the shadows of the forest, his presence lingering like a quiet whisper in the breeze. Elias stood there for a moment, the weight of his journey ahead settling in his heart. The Queen's trials awaited, and now, with the wisdom he had gained from the man with the eye of clarity, he was ready to face whatever lay ahead. Chapter 9. The Queen's Trials. The journey that Elias had undertaken had been long and filled with trials, each one testing his body, heart, and mind in ways he never anticipated. But none of the challenges he had faced so far had prepared him for what awaited him in the Queen's kingdom. The time had come for him to confront the very heart of the Queen's power and the ultimate test of his worthiness. As he and his companions entered the outskirts of Queen Regina's kingdom, a sense of foreboding settled over Elias. The landscape, once vibrant and filled with the warmth of nature, had become cold and barren. The trees were twisted and gnarled, the soil dry and cracked. The air itself seemed to thicken, and Elias felt as though he were walking through a world out of time, suspended between reality and something darker. They approached the Queen's castle, a towering fortress of stone, its walls darkened by age and neglect. The spires reached high into the sky, casting long shadows over the land below. The castle loomed like a specter, its silhouette jagged against the pale sky. Elias could feel the weight of the Queen's presence even before they crossed the threshold. Her power was suffocating, oppressive. Inside the castle, the air was thick with silence. The great halls echoed with the sounds of their footsteps, but there was no other sound, no warmth, no life. The cold stone walls seemed to press in on them from all sides, and every shadow seemed to hide a secret. They made their way to the throne room, where Queen Regina awaited. The Queen sat upon her throne, her gaze cold and calculating. Her beauty was undeniable, but it was a beauty that seemed to come from a place of cruelty, not kindness. Her eyes were sharp, her lips set, in a permanent disdainful curve. Her very presence commanded authority, but Elias could see the faint trace of something deeper, something darker lurking behind her cold exterior. "Prince Elias," the queen's voice rang out, smooth and cold as ice. "So, you have come to face my trials. You are braver than I gave you credit for, or perhaps you are simply foolish." Elias met her gaze, his resolve firm. "I have come to prove my worth," he said, his voice steady. "I will face whatever trials you set before me. I will not turn back." The queen's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Very well, Prince Elias. You have chosen your path, and now you must walk it. But know this: these trials are not for the faint of heart. Many have come before you, and many have failed. You will face the very essence of your fears, your desires, and your weaknesses. Only by overcoming them can you hope to prove yourself worthy." Elias nodded. He had faced many challenges before: Grim the giant, the longest arms, the man with the eye of clarity. But this was different. This was the queen's domain, her kingdom, and her trials were unlike any he had faced. "Your first trial," the queen said, rising from her throne, "is one of strength, but not physical strength as you might expect. No, this trial will test your will, your resolve. You will face an enemy that is not flesh and blood, but your own doubts and fears." With a wave of her hand, the throne room shifted. The cold stone walls seemed to blur, and the air grew thick and heavy. Elias blinked, and suddenly he found himself in a vast, empty desert. The ground beneath his feet was cracked and barren, and the sky above was a dull, oppressive gray. "Where am I?" Elias muttered, his heart racing. The desert stretched endlessly in all directions, and there was no sign of life, no hint of what he was meant to do. "Welcome to your first trial, Prince Elias," a voice echoed from all sides. It was the queen's voice, but it was distorted, as though coming from everywhere at once. "Here, you will face your greatest fear. It is not a physical foe you must defeat, but the fear that resides in your heart. It is the fear of failure, the fear of not being enough, the fear of losing what you desire most." Elias's mind raced. This is it, he thought, the first trial. But I have faced fears before. I will not be swayed by doubt. But as he looked around, the desert began to shift. The ground trembled beneath his feet and shadows began to rise from the earth. At first they were small, just flickers of darkness, but soon they grew larger, taking shape. They were figures, phantoms of his past and future, each one embodying a fear he had long buried. One figure stepped forward, its face obscured. by shadows. Elias recognized it immediately, his father, King Alden. But the king was not smiling. His expression was harsh, disappointed. "You are not ready, Elias," the figure said, its voice echoing with accusation. "You will fail, just like all the others. You think you can defeat the queen, but you are nothing more than a naive boy chasing after a dream." Elias's heart twisted, and for a moment he felt the sting of his father's words as though they were real. "Am I not ready?" he thought. "What if I fail?" But then another figure appeared. This time it was Princess Elara, but she too looked disappointed, her face etched with sorrow. "You will never be worthy of my love, Elias," she whispered, her voice full of sadness. "You are too weak. You are not the man I thought you were." Elias felt the weight of her words, and his knees nearly buckled beneath him. "No, I can't lose her," he thought desperately. "I can't fail her." The figures continued to appear, each one more terrifying than the last. Visions of failure, rejection, and hopelessness. Elias could feel the weight of his own doubts pressing down on him, threatening to crush his spirit. But then, something inside him stirred. He remembered the lessons he had learned, the strength of his heart, the clarity of his mind. He had faced the giants of this world, but now he realized he had to face the greatest giant of all, his own fear. "No," Elias said, his voice shaking at first, but growing stronger with each word. "I will not let you control me. I am not afraid. I will not let these shadows define me." As he spoke, the figures began to fade. The desert around him seemed to shift again, the air growing lighter. The oppressive weight that had hung over him began to lift, and Elias stood tall, his heart steady. "I am worthy," he whispered to himself. "I am enough." Suddenly, the desert disappeared, replaced once more by the cold stone walls of the throne room. The queen stood before him, her gaze fixed upon him with an unreadable expression. "You have passed the first trial," she said, her voice filled with a mixture of surprise and disdain. "You faced your fears and overcame them, but this was only the beginning. The next trial will test you in ways you cannot yet understand." Elias, breathing heavily but with a sense of triumph, nodded. "I am ready," he said, his voice steady. The queen's lips curled into a thin smile, though there was no warmth in it. "We shall see, Prince Elias. We shall see." With that, She turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving Elias standing alone in the cold, empty room. He had passed the first trial, but the road ahead was far from over. The Queen's trials were not just physical, they were psychological, emotional, and spiritual. Each trial would test him in ways he could not yet fathom. But Elias was no longer the same man who had first entered these woods. He had faced his fears, and he had overcome them. He was ready for whatever came next. The Queen's trials would not break him. He would not fail. Chapter 10. The Final Victory. The great hall of Queen Regina's castle loomed before Elias like a darkened monument to the trials he had already endured. The air was thick with a heavy sense of finality, and the walls seemed to close in around him as he stepped inside. The stone floors were cold beneath his feet, and the flickering torches cast long shadows across the chamber. The room felt as though it had been waiting for this moment, for the final confrontation that would determine Elias's fate. Queen Regina, seated upon her imposing throne, watched him with her sharp, calculating eyes. Her expression was as cold as the walls around her. There was no sign of warmth, no sign of the kindness that many believed to be part of her royal nature. She was a woman who had built her power on cruelty and control, and she would not yield her kingdom or her daughter to anyone, no matter the cost. You have come far, Prince Elias. The Queen's voice echoed through the hall, cutting through the silence like a blade. You have faced the trials I set before you, each one designed to break you, to force you to see your weaknesses, and yet you stand before me now, stronger than before, but still unworthy. Elias's heart raced. He had passed each trial one after another, facing his fears, proving his courage, and conquering the shadows within himself. The Queen had pushed him to his limits, but each time he had overcome. And now, standing here in the Queen's dark, foreboding hall, he knew that this was the moment that would determine everything. I have faced your trials, Your Majesty, Elias said, his voice steady and strong. I have proven myself worthy of Princess Elara's love. I have faced the darkness within myself and emerged stronger. I am ready to claim my place beside her. The Queen's lips curled into a thin smile, but there was no warmth in it. You think you are ready? You think you have won? She rose from her throne, her cold gaze never leaving Elias. You are mistaken, Prince. The trials were not just tests of strength, heart, and mind. They were a way of determining your true worth. And you have failed to understand what truly matters. Elias's brow furrowed in confusion. What do you mean? I have done everything you asked. I have faced the impossible and overcome it. I love Princess Elara, and she loves me. That is all that matters. The queen's smile widened, though it held a dark edge. You are a fool, Elias. The trials were never about you or Elara. They were about me. I did not create them to test your love for her, but to test how much you are willing to sacrifice. How far you are willing to go to get what you want. Elias felt a cold shiver run down his spine. What are you talking about? I have already proved myself. I have faced my fears and conquered them. The queen stepped down from her throne, her voice growing colder with each word. You may have faced your fears, but you have not faced the greatest test of all. You think you have won Elara's heart, but you are wrong. You have failed, Elias. You see, the final trial was not just about facing your inner demons. It was about making the ultimate sacrifice. The love you claimed to have for her was never enough. You were never truly willing to sacrifice everything for her. Elias's heart clenched in his chest. What do you want from me? He demanded, his voice shaking with anger and confusion. I have already given everything. I have faced every challenge you set before me, and I have come this far. What more do you want? The queen's eyes glinted with cruel satisfaction. The final test, Elias, is whether you are willing to let go of everything. To let go of your pride, your honor, and your love for Elara. I will not allow you to take her from me. If you truly love her, you will leave her here and walk away. That is the price of your victory. The words struck Elias like a thunderclap. His mind reeled with disbelief. Leave Elara? The thought of it seemed impossible, unthinkable. His entire journey had been for her, to prove that he was worthy of her love. And now, the queen was demanding that he give it all up, that he turn his back on the woman he loved most. You cannot ask that of me, Elias said, his voice trembling with the weight of his emotions. I cannot walk away from her. I love her with all my heart. Everything I have done, everything I've endured, has been for her. She is my destiny. The queen's gaze softened for just a moment, as if she were pitying him. You see, Elias, that is the mistake. You think you can win her love, that you can fight for her. But love is not a thing to be conquered. It is something to be earned, and you have yet to earn it. If you truly loved her, you would walk away and let her be free from this war between us. Elias's mind spun as the queen's words twisted around him. He had already sacrificed so much: his time, his strength, his heart. But now she was asking him to give up the one thing that mattered most: his love for Elara. He thought back to all he had learned throughout his journey, the lessons of strength, patience, and understanding. He had faced the trials and had conquered them, but this was different. This was not a test of physical might or mental acuity. This was a test of his very heart. In that moment, a deep realization washed over Elias. He understood now what the Queen had been trying to tell him. The Queen had sought control over her daughter, control over Elias, control over love itself. But love could not be controlled, not by force or manipulation. True love was not about possession. It was about freedom and choice. Elias stepped forward, his eyes never leaving the Queen's. "You are wrong, Regina," he said, his voice firm, with newfound clarity. "I will not give up my love for Elara. I will not walk away from her, and I will not let you control her. If you think that love can be won by force, you are mistaken. It is not something to be earned by winning trials or making sacrifices. It is something that must be freely given by both sides." The Queen's expression darkened, her lips pulling into a thin, angry line. "You think you can defy me?" she spat. "You are nothing but a naive fool. You will never have her. I will make sure of it." But Elias stood tall, his heart now resolute. "I have already won, Queen Regina. I have faced your trials, and I have learned what matters most. Love is not something to be controlled. It is something to be shared, and I will share it with Elara, no matter what it takes." The Queen's power seemed to flicker for a moment, her grip over the castle weakening. Elias felt the energy in the room shift, as if the very essence of her control was unraveling before him. The trials were over, not because he had conquered them by force, but because he had learned what they truly meant. He had proven that love was not a game to be won, but a bond that could only be forged through understanding, sacrifice, and freedom. The Queen's gaze faltered, and for the first time, Elias saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. She was not invincible. Her power, built on cruelty and control, could not withstand the purity of his heart. She had tried to break him, but in the end, it was she who had been broken. With a final, defeated look, Queen Regina stepped back, her form flickering like a dying flame. "You may have won this battle, Prince Elias," she hissed, her voice filled with venom. "But you will never have her. You will never be free from me. Elias's gaze never wavered. I will fight for her, no matter what. As the queen's presence faded, Elias turned toward the door, his heart pounding with a mixture of victory and relief. The final trial had been passed, not through brute strength or cunning, but through the power of love itself. Elara was waiting for him, and nothing could stand between them now. Great work today. Every moment you spend practicing brings you closer to mastering your English listening and speaking skills. Remember, progress comes with patience and consistency. If this story inspired you or helped you in your learning journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Easy English Spark channel for more lessons and stories. Keep listening, keep speaking, and keep believing in your growth. I'll see you in the next video. Take care and keep shining.